So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to CUP for being here for panel number 3. If you would like to step out and pray, there's a prayer room right in the back over there where they'll be conducting prayer. So our third panel, Democracy as a Path to Peace, Ensuring Stability Through Political Inclusion, sounds a little pie in the sky sometimes, right? For those of us who have been working and writing on this for quite a while, it's like, seriously, we're still going to talk about democracy as a path to peace? We wish. However, last year we did see a couple of bright moments, right? We saw what happened in Bangladesh with the removal of Sheikh Hasina. We saw what happened in Syria. And so while there are these kind of really pessimistic conversations, which is what I engage in most of the time, there have been these glimmers of hope. But I think more interestingly, the data on the ground tells us that, for example, after the Arab Spring, among Arab Spring countries, there was a 67% support for democracy. Today, among Arabs in the Middle East, there's a 78% support for democracy. And so while we become pessimistic about the future, it looks like there's something stirring on the ground that should give us pause to think about why is it that those on the ground still believe that democracy, democratic reform, accountability and transparency is still possible in what they're striving for. So having said that, we will have a panel today that will look at Jordan, at Morocco, at Tunisia, and at Sri Lanka as examples of possible paths towards the future. So we're going to begin with Dr. Jamal Tahat, who will talk about Jordan, analyzing the 2024 parliamentary elections and the growing power of King Abdullah. Do you want to come up here? Whatever you want. What you want? No, whatever you prefer. Okay. Up here? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me here. Thank you for everyone to attend this opportunity to meet and think together. Actually, the title of the brief I have contributed to, and which is also the title of my talk now, it's about...
Speak up, please.
Okay. The title of the speak is about the 2024 elections, parliamentary elections, and the growing power of King Abdullah. This is very clear that election everywhere, it's an opportunity to further democracy and to foster citizen participation. But in Jordan, it was an opportunity for the king to tighten his grip over the state institutions. To understand this anomaly and this unnatural situation and this anomaly, I think there are two major questions. First one, what factors make elections in Jordan ineffective in advancing democracy? And the second question, from my point of view, it is what steps can be taken to ensure that elections serve as an effective means for peaceful democratization in Jordan. So this is the challenge, to address the anomaly and to understand it, and actually also to find a way to deal with it. To answer the first question from as per following up Jordan, I think we need to address 5 sections of the elections scene in Jordan. What happened in Jordan? What was the context of the election? How the Jordanians respond to this context and how they actually act in the election? How King Abdullah II utilized this election? And the fourth section, from my point of view, the motive, the economic motive of authoritarian regime to tighten grip over state institutions. Why they are doing this? Is it a matter of psychological problem, or there is interests, economic interests behind this? And the fifth section, from my point of view, we need to address also, or to understand, it's about what sort of deception being used in Jordan to convince people, whether inside Jordan and international, that we are talking about democracy. How the regime managed to, let me say, sell this event and this practice as quasi-democracy, or to be accepted internationally and locally. To talk about the context, from my point of view, we need a matrix of five sections. First one, it's about the latest constitutional amendments in Jordan, which from these amendments, Parliament becomes sort of paralyzed institution, and there is more than 20 constitutional amendments over the last 20 years, all of them focused on concentrating the power in the king's hands. In addition to that, actually, and which is, from my point of view, very peculiar in Jordan, that the bylaw of the parliament itself allows the pro-king parliamentarians to dismiss any member of the parliament who loudly talk out of the official line. And it happens many times. So the context very clear, and within this context, how the Jordanians respond, and it was very, from my point of view, very natural, at the same time very challenging for the king. 68% of the Jordanians respond with abstention, which means the people who participated in the election, less than 32%. In addition to that, 260,000 of the voters submit blank ballots, which means it's another way of protesting the context, and it's another way of expressing people's opinion of what is going on. The third, or the other section of the scene could be helpful, which is, even this was the very clear Jordanians, the majority of the Jordanians' response. The king was, I don't know how to describe it. He said it clearly that the election being designed, and the system, the political system being designed according to what he called it political modernization vision. And he says clearly, this is his words, this vision built on the highest level of national consensus. 68% are not enough to convince that this is not a national consensus. However, what really supports or why the king said so is because he's somehow disconnected from reality, or he wants something else, or he thinks in a political system that feels 68% of the Jordanians looks like extra burden, and they are not welcomed to become part of the political system. That's why he's really defending what is going on. And by this, with this public response and the king's insistence to defend what he says, called it as political modernization vision, the king after the election behavior really gives very clear idea about what sort of political modernization vision is. First two things he did. He appointed a new government few days after the election, excluding any opportunity, any assumption that the new elected parliament could have a say somehow in the government structure, or who's going to be the prime minister or the ministers. So he is controlling the executive body and excluding a parliament from any way of interfering in formulating the Jordanian cabinet. Not only this, it's also imposed. He did impose his vision on the relation between the cabinet and the parliament, asking the cabinet to, exactly his words, to consult, to dialogue with the parliament and consult its committees. That is the relation between the executive body he appoints and he dismisses upon his discretion, and the elected parliament. And this is according to the vision we are talking about. What is the public will and what is the Jordanians' representative role? 5 دقائق. It's okay. After all, and just to make it clear, why the king insists with his on this vision, and is it again a matter of psychological attitude towards power, or there is economic interests behind this? Actually, from any revision of the economic situation in Jordan, there are so many economists, not only one, who make some assessment about the situation in Jordan, and one of them called it it's not a state, it becomes a dynastic enterprise, as the royal family in fact control more than 25% of the Jordanian GDP. In all sectors you can imagine: agriculture, education, health service, scientific research, universities, excavation for what they called it, I forget the term. All sectors, any sector, transportation, every sector, at least one member of the royal family, or let me call it, by the order of the king. There is organization controlling part of this sector, in fact, controlling and dominating this sector. In scientific research, for instance, one of the prince, uncle of the king, and his daughter managing this sector, two institutions. And in what any sector you can imagine, they are there. So this is actually, from my point of view, explain what is the economic motives behind this political modernization vision. Now, how the king managed to sell this to the international community and to what we can call them a Jordanian secular political components. The election law actually allows something very strange, that Islamic Action Front, while getting exactly 28% of the votes, however, they got 42% of the seats. And the loyalists, by getting 35% of the votes, they got 58% of the seats. At the same time, 37% of the voters being excluded from any presence in the parliament. The issue, it becomes very clear. Either you will accept the king, pro-Western king, somehow we can't deny that he is embracing Western values, or we will accept the venture and the risks and the threats of dealing with Islamist government or Islamist majority. After this, there are few recommendations. Do I have a couple of minutes or no?
You're out of time, sorry.
Out of time, okay. Okay. We will, if I have time, I will discuss it. Okay. Thank you.